Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to a little bit of a tea time video. So this is something that I get asked to share quite a bit, especially if I talk about like a DNF or I talk about something that I don't like. And I thought that I had made one of these more recently, but I must have made it I must have given it a different title than I thought. So basically we're going to be talking about my romance novel Icks or pet peeves. I like calling it romance novel Icks. That's something that on TikTok right now they're saying like booktube Icks or whatever, or book talk Icks, and I was like, ooh, let's do romance novel Icks. So this is basically my pet peeves. And the way I always explain it is that none of these items that I'm going to go over are an absolute, like, I won't read them, but they're things that will bring a rating down for me. They may cause me to DNF, or if an author overly uses these a lot, I may not read the author anymore. So they're just like, it's a case by case basis. But there definitely are some of these that like, I hate them every time they happen, but it's how the author uses it, you know, because some of these, like, you're not supposed to like when they happen, but in how an author uses it and how they make you feel about it could change your opinion of it, you know. So we're going to go through these. I don't really have them ranked or anything. It was just how I came up with them. And I'm sure that I forgot some is part of the thing too. So one of these is really kind of a general thing. And it's something that I've had in conversations with Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life and Jesson from Jesson Reads Romance. We have definitely talked about this recently, and I even talked about this with Sophie the other day because we were talking about Anastasia. I don't mean to name drop or anything, but the overuse right now in the marketing for things to be enemies to lovers. And I really mean this of like, and Sophie explained it in a way to me that I loved. Of course, I love getting the author's perspective on this, saying that like, a lot of romance authors, when they're writing, they're not thinking about what the trope it's going to fit into when they're writing it, right? So they write their romance novel, and then when it's time to put it into the categories, or people are like, what are the tropes? Then they're like, oh, what are the tropes? And then they go back afterwards and are doing it. Where there are some authors who they have a niche and they write to the trope, right? That's all that they write. You know, like think QB Tyler, she writes taboo. There are different kinds, but like she writes taboo. That's what she's going to write. And then there's authors who they're like, oh, well, I don't really know what this fits into. What's really popular that kind of works. And I feel like enemies to lovers is a default. Now, I'm not planning to show examples for every one of these that I do because, again, they're general things. They're not something that I necessarily pick out. But I am going to show with this one, because this is the one that kind of sparked some conversation for me. And again, I'm not throwing any shade at the author. You'll see when I show the book. I love this book, so I'm not throwing any shade. But we have Flawless, which I read for a Patreon pick, and it got picked for enemies to lovers. So the way that I do my Patreon is, I mean, I have lots to go with it, but once a month I pick a trope out of I have a jar that has a bunch of different tropes in it, and I pick one out. And then people recommend books that fit into this trope, and then we vote on one. So this was recommended for enemies to lovers because under the title, it says a small town enemies to lovers romance. So this one got nominated and we picked it. And again, so glad we picked it. But very quickly when I got into this book, this was not an enemies to lovers, okay? And again, I'm going off of like what my definition of enemies is, so you can disagree, that's fine. To me, this one is like mild dislike, right? Because the heroine, she is the daughter of his agent, of Rhett's agent, and she is sent with him on his like tour of bull riding to keep him in line and make sure he doesn't make any more media faux pas or like cause any publicity issues. And so he is like, oh, she's a ball buster. She's going to bust my chops. I have full like supervision from her, but he's mostly more like annoyed with her. There's not like any, and definitely it's not enemies on her side. Like she's just there to do her job and make her dad proud. And so like this isn't enemies. Again, still a very lovely book, but there's nothing more than some like mild animosity at the beginning of this book, right? And then you know, like, I feel like that trope just gets overused because enemies to lovers is really popular. A lot of people, it's their favorite trope. You know, in a lot of mafia, it is enemies to lovers. Like, think of like The Bully. You know, think of Stolen Heir when someone's literally kidnapped. Think of Mafia Madman, same thing. Like those are enemies. But when enemies to lovers gets used in a contemporary like small town romance sense, unless they're literally rival families in a small town, like it rarely is. And I don't know, I just feel like it sets the wrong expectation, because when there's enemies to lovers, I expect a certain level of tension between the couple. Sometimes I expect that to be a slow burn depending on the kind of enemies that they are, because you don't always just anger bang an enemy. Sometimes they need to become a friend first, you know? Sometimes it's an enemies to friends to lovers, right? Like that's what I was talking with Sophie about, because that's what happens in Anastasia. They are enemies because their families are literally on opposite ends. But through the story, like they don't just go from enemies to lovers. It's more like enemies to friends to lovers is how it goes, you know? So anyway, I just get kind of annoyed when that trope is used all the time, because I feel like I can't trust it when I see it in an Amazon title that this is a enemies to lovers. Because I'm like, is it? Or are you using that because it's a searchable term? So that's the part where like I kind of separate it from what the book is, but I don't want to have to. Like I know that's a game the authors have to play, but I don't love it because I love enemies to lovers. I love those tropes. And when everybody's called an enemies to lovers and it's not one, then I never know whether I can trust when it's marked as enemies to lovers. Does that make sense? So again, this is more of a mild pet peeve. Like again, that didn't ruin this book for me, and I didn't say like, oh, whatever, but it made me chuckle about it because this book was picked for my patron because we picked an enemies to lovers, and this wasn't one. Like the book was still fantastic, but it wasn't that, right? Okay, now we're going into one that is a little trickier to explain, especially because I love dark romance and I do like dubious consent and non-consent. I do like those. What I don't like is if the book is set up to have proper BDSM etiquette and safety measures, and then we don't follow them. Does that make sense? I've actually made a video on this before. It's very old. I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now, and I don't know how well I articulated it, but I made a video about this before when I did a BDSM video explaining the difference, because there's a difference between a book that gets recommended as BDSM, which is actually like following protocol. There's safe words, there's aftercare, there's maybe there's a club involved, like however it happens, it has proper protocol and safety and mental health is looked after. Then there's scenarios where it is dubious consent or non-consent, or even still consensual, but there are BDSM things happening and we don't set up safety beforehand, and it's supposed to just be hot in the moment and great. And again, like I read a lot of books with non-consent, which I mean is assault. Like I read a lot of books that have rape fantasy in them, or dubious consent, where there's never going to be a safe word and one person's going to do what they want, whether the person says yes or not. But that is a certain story. Like that's a certain thing happening. When I'm reading a contemporary and all of a sudden we like tied the person up, or we start, you know, just spanking away and we didn't talk about anything beforehand, I get very uncomfortable, because those are the type of things that lead to assault charges against someone, because you took a consensual sex act where, you know, we were consenting to have a good time, and then you interjected things into it. And in real life, that's when you could have someone afterwards who's like, I consented for us to have sex, but I didn't consent for this guy to be choking me out or for this guy to tie my wrist behind my back. And sure, it might all work well in the romance novel, but I just, as someone who like has great respect for what BDSM can do in a healing sense and what it can do for releasing someone's from constraint in a way. To see it like mishandled just gives me the big icks. Like, it gives me the big icks, and it makes me very uncomfortable when we're not checking in on that. I get real nervous real fast. My light's changing again. Don't mind me. Okay, next we have cheating because my partner is a jerk or a bitch. So I have icks for cheating in general. Don't like reading it. I have read some where it's worked out for me. Like, I haven't hated the book because of it. But usually, to me, those are examples where someone is stuck in the relationship. Like, I think of Long Shot, which doesn't even, that's not the same. But that scenario where the person is trying to get out and they can't because of safety reasons. And so, like, they're having a secret affair or something. And then there's a thing of just like, I'm afraid of hurting the person, so I didn't break up with them before I cheated. Or the person's a bitch, so it's okay for me to cheat. I don't like that at all, because a person still deserves respect to a certain level. Like, again, if they're not abusive to you and mistreating you, like, people deserve to be told that you've checked out of the relationship. And I don't like seeing this. I don't like it. It very rarely will work for me if it's just happening for that reason. One that I bring up all the time, and I thank my big sis for explaining this to me and what it means. White fanging, which this is a term that comes from New Girl, and it is brought up in a scene where, like, I can't remember, like, I know it was Jess and Nick had been together, and one of them thinks that they won't be good for the other person, so even though they've now hooked up, they're going to leave them for their own good, because we've had sex now, but I'm running out the next day because I'm not good enough for you. And Schmidt explains it as, like, you're white fanging her. You're letting them go for their own good, which white fanging referring to the Jack London novel about letting the wolf go back to the wild, right? And so this is a term, and it particularly happens that I see in a lot of, like, I've seen it in a lot of historicals, particularly Sarah McLean. Sometimes it works well in her books. Not every book has been bad, but specifically, there's a couple of her books where it happened twice in one book that they hooked up, and then the hero was like, I'm not good enough for her. She needs to have her destiny met. And so after they have this incredibly, like, intimate sex scene, well, I always say this, while the cum is still wet, they're out of there for their own good, right? Hate it. I hates it so much. And again, that isn't only happening in Sarah McLean, but it was reading Sarah McLean books that Crystal had first, like, articulated this to me, that was something that annoyed her. And I was like, yes, I hate that. And it happens in all sorts, but it's one thing if it's just like, it's when the person thinks we've had sex, we shouldn't because I'm not good enough for you, and then they leave the person with no explanation or discussion. Or maybe they even discuss it and they're still like, I'm not good enough for you. Now that I fucked you, I'm not good enough for you. Bye. Like, I hate that. I hate it so much. Hate. Oh, this is one. See him or her talking to an ex, and then everything is over. All the trust that's been building up, everything we've worked through, and you see them talking to their ex at a party, or they go to a family event and the ex is there, and the mother or the sister makes a comment of, like, we thought they could be together forever, and then you're like, wow, this is doomed. And you don't, like, you are just checked out of the relationship because of the ex, who you know they don't still want to be with because they don't like them, or it was a bad relationship, but you see them together and you're like, oh, but they should be together. They're so beautiful. And you don't even talk to the partner. You're just like, I'm done. This is a third act conflict in so many fucking books. And I hate it. I hate it so bad. And that goes hand in hand with the evil ex who ruins it, right? it's not now like you noticing it, which is one level of it, but it's another of like the ex does something to get into your relationship. Usually it's a woman, and this is a pet peeve I really like the evil ex-girlfriend who is just so jealous that you're now with her man that she makes it look like they slept together, or she claims she's pregnant and she's not, or she does something to fuck with his work. Like, anytime like an ex is the reason that their relationship falters, I don't like that, because it kind of goes back to the other thing where it's like, you haven't made me believe that your relationship is strong if the first time an ex like pops up that you like it's all over. Like, because then when they do make up, they get back together, I'm like, wow, are you guys going to communicate now? Because I don't think that you will. You've proven to me that you don't communicate well. So I don't know. You know, I lose my faith in them when they're easily broken up that way. Also, overuse of pet names. Okay. I don't have a specific like pet name that I'm pointing out. But there was one I read recently. I was loving this book. But the hero called her baby 3 times in one paragraph. Like, after every sentence, he said, comma, baby. And literally, it made this book almost impossible to finish. And I was so mad because I was liking it. And this was this book where it was a straight for you romance. And he called her baby on each page at least 3 to 4 times, if not 3 to 4 times in one paragraph. And I wanted to just go with my red pen and erase 85% of them, because I love pet names. I do. I love them. But when they're overdone, they stop being cute and they're just like, did you forget her name? Because, you know, the pet name is in place of a name, right? So think of it this way. Like, lets you say, oh, baby, come over here and let me hold you, baby. I love you, baby. Let me comfort you, baby. Baby, take it. Like, if that was a paragraph, put Natalie's name in there. Oh, Natalie, come over here, Natalie. Let me cuddle you, Natalie. Take it, Natalie. If that was all in one sentence, you would be like, oh my God, stop doing that. Because, yeah, a pet name is in place of your name. So how many times are you saying someone's name when you're talking to them? You're not constantly saying it. You like say it every once in a while and think, you know, like I think when I'm talking to a friend and then I'm like, I gotta tell you, Jessin, oh, it was so good, right? You're like emphasizing. So it's like, I gotta tell you, baby. I just love that. Like, that's one thing. But the overuse of pet names, whatever the name, because the names being cringy is a different pet peeve, which I actually don't really have on this one. But the overuse of a pet name, no matter what it is just, you've got to use it sparingly. You got to use it sparingly. You can't just go bananas with it like that, because you wouldn't do that with someone's name. And a pet name is replacing someone's name. That's why it's a pet name. You wouldn't say the person's name 10 times on a page. Don't say the pet name that many times. And when I see it, to me, it's a clue of a bad editor. And if I'm noticing the editing, we're in for a bad time, because I'm not the person on Romance BookTube who's noticing that stuff, okay? I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the smut. I'm here for the story. I'm here for the romance. I'm not here for critiquing your editing. Like, no. But when I notice that editor was not free with their red pen, I'm like, nope. No thanks. All right, just a couple more that I'm putting in this video. Feels good to rant now and then. I don't rant a lot, but these are the things. So these other two do have to do with sexier parts, okay? These have to do with, well, I guess there's 3 actually. One of these I mentioned in my least favorite, and this is going to be on any romance booktuber, like any romance readers, is the weird terms during sex. I brought this up and everyone thought this was hilarious. I'm glad you did. In a book that I DNF'd this year, the term ball juice was used for cum. And it literally was like, I'm going to fill you up with my ball juice. That is the sentence it was used in, y'all. And it was used more times than that. But ejaculate was called ball juice. Okay? Okay? No. Out of here. I'm not as specific with some. There are things like squishy, fleshy passage, or yeah, like just those really cringe ones that belong in really old romance novels when they were trying to be clever. But yeah, I don't have as many specific ones. It's only when it's really said. I don't love when it's straight up called penis. I know it shouldn't bother me. But I don't really love when penis or vagina are used in the sexy term. Like, I don't mind, this is funny, but I was just rereading, was it Embers? It might have been Embers, but she catches sight of him it was Last Light. It was Last Light, because she's supposed to be keeping watch and he's taking a bath in the lake, and she says she catches a glimpse of his penis. And I didn't mind when she says penis there, because she's not really looking at it in a sexual light yet. This is her first perusal of him, and she's like, wow, his penis is good. Like, she's noticing it. And then later on, when we have sexy time, she doesn't call it penis. She calls it his length or his girth or his cock. Like, those work better for me. But when we're having sexy time, when penis or vagina is said, it feels like I'm in a doctor's office. And then it's weird. Which I know, there are definitely weird names to use for the body parts. But penis and vagina just kind of take because to me, I know those are parts for a sexual organ, but for me, those are like reserved to be the like actual names of the thing. I don't know. This is getting into my psyche. This does not have to be how it is for anyone else. No. But when I'm talking about a penis, I want to be able to say that without it being weird, right? Because it's a body part, and it could be like, it's a penis. You know, it doesn't evoke anything, or like my vagina. I don't want that to automatically have to be sexual because it's a body part, like my elbow, you know? And so when it's in a sexy scene and we're saying like he grabbed his penis and held it up to my entrance, I'm kind of just like, ooh, what's happening? I don't know. But again, these are my pet peeves. They don't have to be yours. Again, I would rather they say penis than ball juice. So, you know, I would be okay with that. But that's just, it's pet peeves. It's the thing. All right. Now, this is just a mild pet peeve, as someone who is always looking for like unique, sexy things or things to do oddly specific things for. When there is a sexy act or a term or a toy that is teased, and then we don't use it, or it's only reference to that we used it. I see this happen quite a bit in the more mainstream books, because we'll like make jokes about sexy items or sexy things we're going to do, and then it doesn't happen, and I feel very let down, right? It's that thing of like in the Olivia Dade, right? I know there was a special scene on her website, okay? But the pegging didn't happen in the book, and we were teasing the pegging in the book, and then it didn't happen. It didn't happen in the book. It happened in a special scene. And that was disappointing to me, because I'm like, we so often get to see those things represented. And so if you're going to tease that this couple is into it, like not just making a joke about it, like they would like to, and then you don't do it, I get really disappointed, because I'm always looking for those things. And then they're not there. And I'm like, come on, do it. But anyway, and then the last one, and this one is something I joke about all the time, and that is seeing books that give me lady blue balls. Now, let me be clear. I don't just mean that there is a really low amount of steam, or it is, you know, only one scene. Like, those can do that. But I'm talking about interruptus. So coitus interruptus, when it happens more than one time in a book, okay? And generally before they've ever had sex. So this is a specific one to me, and I will joke in reviews. I'll be like, this gave me lady blue balls. And that doesn't necessarily ruin a book for me. This isn't really why I would DNF a book. And I get teased sometimes by my friends because it's like, Jen, you're really horny for your books. And I'm like, they made me horny. This wasn't me just being like, all they need to have sex. No, I'm talking about when we are almost there and something interrupts us, which can be a good way to build tension or whatever, it's fine. But when an author does it more than once, when there is like the first 3 times a couple is trying to have sex, they get interrupted. Or maybe she gets an orgasm, but then he has to stop. Like, literally, coitus interruptus happens more than 1 time in a book. I get really frustrated for everybody involved, especially myself. So this is specific to me. And again, it's not a reason to DNF, but it is a reason that I would be like, why did you tease us that many times and not follow through? I feel a bit cheated out of things. I'm being really vulnerable with y'all, so don't tease me. But I get so frustrated when that happens too many times, because I'm like, if you don't want them to have sex yet, then don't get us to that point. You know, like if it's like, oh, I want to push it off because of reasons, like do that, but don't have it be more than once. And also, this doesn't count if either of them is hesitant because of past trauma. Just want to make clear that that can happen 3 or 4 times. It's totally fine. I'm specifically talking about we're both ready to go. None of us have any trauma and her baby's crying, which is understandable, but don't do that more than once. Don't have the kid come in, don't have them cry, don't have them throw up more than once, okay? Because if you do it too many times, the blue starts to build and your girl feels unsatisfied, and we don't want that. We don't want that. So there you go. Thank you, everyone. I hope this was fun. Like I said, these are pet peeves. Most of these are not end game enders for me. This is just fun. And so I'd love to hear some of your pet peeves. Maybe I'd even make a video reacting to your pet peeves if you want to share. That could be really fun. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this. I put up new videos 4 to 5 times a week, so definitely check those out. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.